Daniel does everything right. He earns a steady paycheck. He doesn't blow money on things he doesn't need. Every month, whatever's left over goes straight into his savings account. 5 years ago, he had $50,000 saved. Today, that number sits at $65,000. By every instinct he has, that looks like winning. But here's the question worth asking. Is his money actually growing, or is the number just getting bigger? That's the strange part. Daniel didn't make a single bad decision, and there's a real chance he's still losing. So here's the question. This video is going to answer. How does someone save money every single month, watch the number climb, and still end up with less than they think? Most people treat a growing bank balance as the finish line. The number goes up, so you must be doing well. That's the whole scoreboard. But there's a friend of Daniel's, we'll call her Mia, who started with the same $50,000 and made a different choice. Some of hers stayed in savings, same as Daniel's, but a portion went somewhere else. Into a small stake in a friend's business, into a simple index fund, later into a rental property. Before going further, it's worth saying clearly, this isn't an argument that cash is useless. Cash still has a job, an emergency fund, rent due next month, a bill you know is coming. That money needs to be stable and available, not outworking in the market. The real question isn't cash or assets. It's what happens to the money you don't need anytime soon. Daniel would put it simply, I don't want to lose my money. Mia would say the same thing back to him. Neither do I. That's why I don't keep all of it sitting still. Both of them are being rational. They're just solving for different risks. To see who's actually right, you have to understand what money is. Not what it feels like, what it technically is. Money hasn't always worked the same way. Over history, it's taken different forms. Commodities people traded directly, coins tied to precious metals, paper notes redeemable for something physical, and eventually, the kind of money almost every country uses today, which isn't backed by a physical commodity at all. It holds value because a government stands behind it and enough people agree to treat it as valuable. Economists call this fiat money. That's not a conspiracy, it's just the system currently in use. But it means the $65,000 in Daniel's account isn't a fixed, guaranteed amount of buying power. It's a number that can be worth more or less depending on what's happening in the broader economy. Here's the part that surprises people. Central banks in most major economies don't just tolerate mild inflation. They typically aim for it on purpose. The reasons aren't as simple as get people to spend. Some inflation gives policymakers room to respond to downturns, helps avoid the deeper problems that come with falling prices, and keeps wages and prices adjusting smoothly over time. Encouraging money to circulate instead of sitting idle is part of the picture too. Just not the whole story. The important thing for Daniel isn't the policy detail, it's the effect. If prices rise a little every year, the same pile of cash buys a little less every year, even though the number on the screen never drops. Picture an ice cube sitting on a counter, melting it on purpose, and it isn't disappearing. It's just quietly losing size the longer it sits there doing nothing. That's not cash shrinking. Cash is still cash. What shrinks is what that cash can buy. Daniel never got that memo. Nobody hands it to most people. He did what felt responsible, and the effect worked against him without him noticing. So, what's on the other side of this? This is where Mia's approach matters. A productive asset doesn't just hold a number. It's connected to something that's actually working. A share of a company is partial ownership of a business that sells things and earns revenue. An index fund isn't a business itself. It's ownership spread across hundreds of businesses at once. So Mia owns a small slice of whatever all of them collectively earn. A rental property brings in rent from a tenant, and its value tends to move with the area around it, though it also comes with real costs, like maintenance, taxes, and the occasional vacancy. None of these are magic. They're just connected to real economic activity instead of sitting apart from it. Cash is a receipt. A productive asset is closer to an engine. That difference is mechanical, not philosophical. A receipt doesn't create anything new by itself. An asset tied to a working business or a growing local economy has a chance to. Now here's where the story gets uncomfortable for Mia. 3 years in, her portfolio dropped. Her original $50,000 in assets had grown to $80,000, and then a rough year knocked it down to $65,000. Daniel saw it happen. "See," he said, "this is exactly why I keep my money in the bank." In that moment, he wasn't wrong to feel that way. Watching money you worked for disappear on a screen is genuinely uncomfortable, and there's a well-documented reason for that. Research in behavioral economics suggests that losses tend to feel significantly more painful than an equivalent gain feels rewarding. So, a $15,000 drop registers far louder in the brain than a $15,000 gain ever would. There's a second effect stacked on top of it. A number that stays flat feels safe right now. A number that moves feels dangerous right now. Almost nobody's brain is built to naturally weigh what a decision does 10 years out over what it feels like this afternoon. So, the safe choice isn't actually safe. It's just quiet. And the risky choice isn't reckless. It's just visible. Now stretch the same two starting points out 10 full years, using simple rounded assumptions just to make the shape of it visible. Daniel's $50,000 sat in savings. Let's say prices rose an average of around 3% a year over that decade. A rough, typical assumption, not a specific prediction. His balance may have technically grown a little from bank interest, but in terms of what it can actually buy, that original $50,000 now behaves more like $37,000 did when he started. Mia's $50,000 went into a mix of productive assets. Even counting the year it dropped to $65,000, a long-term average return somewhere in the historical ballpark of stocks and ownership assets, again, a rough illustrative assumption, not a promise, would put her nominal balance near $98,000 after 10 years. Adjusted for the same rising prices Daniel dealt with, that's roughly $69,000 in real buying power. Same starting number, same decade. Very different outcome. Not because Mia was reckless, and not because Daniel was careless, but because one of them was holding something designed to hold still, and the other was holding something connected to things that grow. And that's the actual idea underneath this whole video. Cash is useful. It's stable. It's liquid, and it has a real job to do. But over long stretches of time, a growing bank balance isn't automatically the same thing as growing wealth. The number can go up, while what it can actually buy quietly goes nowhere. The shift worth making isn't get rid of cash. It's knowing which job each dollar is doing. Keep enough in cash to cover what's coming soon, the emergency fund, the near-term expenses, the plans you already know about. Let the rest slowly move into things that are actually connected to economic growth, understanding that it will occasionally feel uncomfortable in the short run, the way it did for Mia. Daniel wasn't careless. He optimized for the wrong risk, the risk of losing money today, without noticing the slower risk of losing purchasing power over years. So, back to the opening question. How does someone save money every month and still end up with less than they think? By watching a number go up and assuming that number alone means their wealth is growing with it. Don't just count your dollars. Ask what those dollars can still buy and what they're actually invested in.